The stars stretched endlessly, cold and silent, and in that endless sea drifted a broken human fighter craft. Its hull was torn, engines dead, and its pilot lay unconscious, blood floating in small red beads across the cracked canopy. He should have died there, forgotten by the galaxy. But fate had another path waiting. A small alien civilian freighter passed through the sector. Its crew were simple traders, not warriors. Their scanners picked up the faint human life sign. One of the crew whispered in fear, reminding the others that the Empire had declared humans too dangerous to touch. The order was clear. Leave them. Let them die in the void. But the captain was different. She stared at the blinking signal, then at her crew. Her voice shook but was steady. If we leave him, what does that make us? The freighter slowed, engines humming softly as it approached the wreck. The alien crew watched with trembling hands as they latched onto the human craft. The pilot inside barely breathed. His eyes opened just a crack, seeing shapes that were not human. He thought it was the end. He thought the Empire had caught him, but gentle hands pulled him free. They carried him into the warmth of their ship, sealing the hatch behind them. The alien healer worked quickly, pressing strange glowing gels over his wounds, wrapping him in soft layers of their own medical fabric. The human's chest rose weakly, then fell, then rose again. He was alive. The crew watched silently, fear in their eyes. They all knew the punishment for helping a human. Still, none of them spoke against their captain's choice. They had made their decision together. The human woke hours later, his throat dry, his mind clouded. He tried to sit up, but the healer pushed him gently back down. His vision cleared, and for the first time he saw the faces around him. Large eyes, pale skin that shimmered faintly in the ship's lights. They were nothing like him, yet there was kindness in their expressions. He croaked out a single word. Why? The captain leaned closer, her voice almost a whisper. Because life is life. Those words would carry weight far beyond that small ship, but at that moment the human only closed his eyes and let sleep take him. For the first time since his battle began, he felt safe. Outside, the freighter's sensors detected patrol ships drawing near, Imperial warships sharp and cold. The crew froze. If the patrol discovered the human aboard, they would all be executed without trial. The captain ordered silence, dimming their lights, running quiet through the stars. The patrol ships passed close, scanners sweeping, but luck was with them. The freighter remained hidden in the dark. The alien crew breathed again, but fear remained heavy in their hearts. They had crossed a line. They had saved one of the most hated beings in the galaxy. If word spread, their families would be punished, their homes destroyed. Yet none of them regretted it. When they looked at the wounded man resting in their care, they knew they had chosen the harder road, and the right one, as the freighter drifted. Further from danger, the captain stood alone at the viewing window, staring into the black. She thought of her people, of the Empire's cruelty, and of the man they had just saved. Something told her that this act would not fade quietly. Something told her that the galaxy had just shifted, a tiny spark in the dark waiting to ignite. The human stirred in his sleep, his lips moving without sound. He dreamed of Earth, of oceans, and forests far away. He dreamed of home, a place he thought he would never see again. He did not know that because of this rescue, entire fleets would one day burn. He did not know that the kindness of strangers would bring down empires. The freighter continued its silent journey, carrying more than just cargo now. It carried a secret. It carried hope. And it carried the seed of judgment that would one day fall across the stars. In the stillness of space where a man had almost died forgotten, life had been chosen instead. And that choice would echo louder than any weapon, louder than any fleet. Until the galaxy itself trembled to remember it, the galaxy whispered in shadows, and the whispers carried one name: human. No empire admitted it aloud, but the story spread quickly. A dying Terran pilot, pulled from the void by a simple freighter. Crew, it was only one act of kindness, one choice against orders, Yet the empires hated such defiance and they punished it without mercy. The alien freighter did not return home. The captain knew that if they docked at any imperial station, their secret would be discovered. So they slipped into hidden lanes, moving from quiet moons to forgotten outposts. The human lay in their medbay, slowly recovering. His wounds closed, his body healed, but his spirit carried scars deeper than flesh. Each time he opened his eyes, he expected chains. Instead, he found water, food, and gentle voices that told him to rest. But safety never lasted long in a galaxy. Ruled by fear, an imperial broadcast swept through every channel. An order for the arrest of the freighter and its crew. They had been seen, tracked by sensors and marked as traitors. Images of the human pilot were displayed alongside their names. The message was clear. This crew aided the enemy. Bring them in, dead or alive. The crew trembled when they saw it. Families would now shun them. Friends would pretend not to know them, and the Empire would hunt them without end. The human pilot, still weak, saw their fear. He knew the price they had paid to keep him alive. He whispered a promise, his voice rough. "My people will not forget you." The captain only shook her head. "You must survive. That is enough." She did not believe the humans had strength left to protect anyone. The galaxy laughed at Terrans, calling them broken remnants of old wars. But deep in the dark, far from her view, the Terran fleets heard the whispers in hidden systems on the edges of dead stars. The Terran navy still waited. They had gone unseen for generations, building in silence. Their admirals heard the rumor of a rescue. They learned how the Empire punished innocent civilians for saving one of their own. The council of commanders gathered. The oldest among them stood, his voice iron. One of ours was saved, and for that they were hunted. This will not stand. We will show them what it means to touch a human life. Orders moved like lightning. Carriers powered up, dreadnoughts stirred from their docks. Factories that had slept for years roared awake. Weapons gleamed in the shadows. Terran Marines checked their rifles. Pilots sharpened their focus. It was no longer about defense, it was no longer about survival. It was judgment. The alien empire that punished the rescuers remained blind. They laughed in their halls of marble, boasting of their strength. They thought the humans scattered and weak. They thought the age of Terran wrath had ended long ago. They were wrong. In secret channels, a message spread through the Terran fleets. 5 words only. They saved one human. Judgment. Back aboard the freighter, the human pilot grew stronger. He stood for the first time, still weak but alive. The healer helped him, and the crew smiled despite their fear. He felt like family. Among them, he asked the captain where they would go. She did not know. Every star seemed dangerous now. Every station a trap. They had only their courage and their decision to guide them. Then, without warning, the ship's sensors lit up. Dozens of Imperial patrol ships appeared at the edge of the system. Their comms came alive. "Surrender the human and your deaths. Will be swift, resist, and your ship will be torn apart." The crew froze. They were unarmed traitors. Their ship had no weapons to speak of. Escape was impossible. The human stood tall, though pain still burned through his body. He wanted to fight, but he had nothing. He placed a hand on the captain's shoulder and whispered, "Do not fear. You will not face this alone." She did not understand, but in his voice was a certainty. Moments later, the void trembled. From the black appeared shapes vast and terrible, human warships sliding from hidden warp tunnels, sleek destroyers, massive cruisers, and at the heart of them, a dreadnought that blotted the stars. The Imperial patrol froze, fear cutting through their bravado. No one had seen Terran fleets in centuries. They were myths. They were legends, yet here they were, very real. The Terran admiral's voice thundered across the channel, cold and final. "You dared punish those who saved one of ours. For that, you will face judgment." The Imperial ships panicked, trying to retreat. But beams of white fire lanced out, tearing their hulls apart. Explosions lit the void, one after another, until only silence remained. The freighter crew stared in shock, their small ship dwarfed by the titanic vessels surrounding them. The human smiled weakly. I told you we do not forget. The captain could only stare, realizing the spark she lit had grown into a firestorm. In that moment, the galaxy shifted again. The empires who thought humans broken would soon learn. Humanity did not simply survive, humanity returned with fury, and all of it began with one rescue in the dark, one act of kindness that could not be erased. The wreckage of the Imperial patrol still drifted in the black, glowing faintly as twisted hulls spun apart. The freighter's crew could not look away. They had seen battles before on their holoscreens, but never anything like this. The Terran warships had moved with terrifying precision, as if every shot was calculated, every maneuver designed to end the fight in seconds. It was not a battle. It was judgment carried out in silence. The human pilot stood on unsteady legs, gazing at the sight. His eyes carried both pride and sorrow. He knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had been quiet for centuries. Building in the shadows, now the galaxy would learn they had not forgotten. The alien captain approached him, her voice low. They came for you. He nodded slowly. Not just for me, for what you did. On the Terran dreadnought, Admiral. Cayenne watched the destruction fade on his tactical screen. His jaw was set like iron. Signal the fleets, begin the deployments. Across distant sectors, hidden Terran armadas stirred awake. Ships long thought lost lit their engines. Carriers opened their massive hangar bays, swarms of fighters ready to launch. A storm was gathering, and the galaxy did not yet see it coming. Meanwhile, news of the destroyed patrol spread fast. Imperial networks scrambled to cover the story, but whispers carried faster than official broadcasts. Rumors said the humans had returned. Some claimed to have seen ships the size of cities. Others swore they had seen only ghosts. But one truth spread like fire. An Empire fleet had been erased in moments. In the capital of the alien empire, the High Council gathered in a hall of black stone. Their voices rose in panic. This cannot be. The humans were finished centuries ago. One shouted, another hissed, legends, nothing more. Yet none could explain the silence of their patrol. None could explain the terror in the reports. The Emperor himself sat in his towering seat, his eyes cold. He remembered old wars. He remembered the cost of underestimating Earth. He said nothing, but deep in his chest a seed of dread began to grow. Back on the freighter, the crew stared at the massive Terran warships encircling them. They were offered escort. A human officer boarded their ship, tall and scarred. His voice was calm, but heavy. You saved one of ours. You are under our protection now. The crew exchanged nervous glances. They had never expected to be caught between empires, yet here they were, passengers of fate. The human pilot placed a hand on the captain's shoulder. You gave me life. Now they will give you safety. The convoy traveled through silent corridors of space escorted by destroyers whose cannons glowed with restrained fire. The freighter looked like a speck beside them, but it moved under the shield of giants. The alien crew finally allowed themselves to breathe, yet unease filled the air. They wondered if their choice had doomed not just themselves, but their whole species. Far ahead, in Terran command bunkers, hidden beneath shattered moons, admirals and generals gathered. Maps of star systems spread before them. Marked in red were the empires that had laughed at humanity's weakness. Marked in white were their hidden strongholds, factories, and supply lines. The Terran Council spoke in grim tones. They punished those who showed kindness. They will now face the weight of that cruelty. Every ship forged in hidden shipyards came alive. Some were sleek and sharp like blades. Others were massive fortresses of steel and fire. Their names carried ancient echoes: Retribution, Iron Dawn, Judgment's Flame. At last, the veil was lifted. Humanity was no longer in hiding. They were preparing to march. The alien empire, still blind to the full danger, sent fleets to search the outer rims. They expected scattered rebels, easy prey, but what they found instead was silence. Empty systems stripped bare. Ghostly beacons pulsing in the dark. The hunters felt watched, and for good reason. Terran submarines in space, stealth ships, followed their every move, unseen but ready to strike. The freighter captain stood at her viewing window, staring at the endless line of Terran ships. "All this for one life," she whispered. The human beside her answered softly, "For one life, for every life. That is who we are." She turned to look at him, and for the first time she understood why the empires feared his kind. Then came the first true storm. A Terran fleet emerged over an imperial mining world. The defenders had numbers, but numbers did not matter. Human destroyers weaved through their lines like wolves through sheep. Carriers released fighters that struck with surgical fire. Dreadnoughts unleashed beams that tore mountains apart from orbit. The planet shook as its defenses fell in hours. Not a conquest, but a message. Across the stars, voices rose in panic. The Empire sent calls for reinforcements, but ships vanished one by one. Trade routes went silent. Stations fell dark, and in every shadow the same words echoed. They saved one human. Admiral Kane stood aboard his flagship, staring into the void as reports flooded in. A slow, grim smile touched his lips. Humanity had been patient for centuries, but patience had ended. Now the storm had broken and nothing could stop it. The freighter's crew watched the galaxy change around them. They had chosen compassion once, a simple act of mercy. Now they traveled at the heart of a war that would reshape the stars. Their captain no longer doubted what she had set in motion. The spark of rescue had become a fire, and soon the galaxy would burn. The galaxy was no longer quiet. Rumors of Terran warships spread like lightning. Caravans whispered of whole fleets erased. Miners spoke of planets bombarded until their skies burned. The alien empire tried to calm the panic, declaring it all lies, but the truth could not be hidden. One small act of mercy had grown into storms of fire. Humanity had returned, and their first strike was only the beginning. Far from the capital, on a lonely outpost guarding the edge of an asteroid belt, an Imperial fleet sat in arrogant silence. Their commander laughed at the rumors. "Ghost stories," he said. "Humans are nothing but shadows. Our fleets have crushed them before. We will crush them again." But even as he spoke, the stars above the outpost trembled. Silent rips of light opened, and from them poured Terran warships. They came not as raiders but as executioners. The first volley of beams shattered the outpost shields in seconds. Fighters screamed down in tight formations, cutting apart defensive turrets like paper. The Imperial fleet scrambled, shouting orders. Ships turned to meet the attackers, but it was too late. Human destroyers weaved through their lines, striking engines and reactors with precise fire. Explosions rippled across the void. Each second was a death sentence. Inside the Terran flagship, Admiral Kane's voice was cold and measured. "Target their command ship." One dreadnought shifted, its cannons glowing brighter than a sun. A single shot lanced through the void and split the Imperial flagship in half. The pieces spun away, burning. Silence followed, not of peace but of judgment complete. The humans did not cheer. They did not gloat. They only moved on, leaving wreckage behind them. The freighter that had rescued the human pilot still traveled under Terran escort. The alien captain and her crew watched in horror and awe. They had never seen war like this, not even in the Empire's bloodiest campaigns. The human pilot stood beside them, his face hard. "This is what it means when we say we do not forget," the captain whispered. "But what if the Empire fights back with everything?" He looked at her with steady eyes. "Then everything will fall." Across the Empire, leaders panicked. The High Council shouted in their Blackstone chamber, "Strike!" At their hidden bases, burn their homes. But they had no maps, no routes. The Terrans had hidden too well. For centuries the galaxy had ignored them, and in that ignorance, humans had sharpened their blades. Now, every attempt to strike back ended in silence. Fleets gone without a trace, on one border world. Imperial soldiers forced their civilians to watch broadcasts of Terran attacks. "See," they lied, "they are monsters. They will burn all life. Only the Empire can protect you." But even as the words echoed, a new message spread. Recordings of Terran voices captured from broken comms. A single sentence repeated again and again. "They saved one human, and for that, we rise." In quiet corners of the galaxy, Alien civilians began to whisper. Some wondered if the humans were truly monsters. If one rescue had sparked this fury, maybe there was something deeper. Some even prayed that if they ever faced the Terrans, they would be spared for acts of mercy. Meanwhile, the Terran fleets pressed further. Each strike was deliberate, not random. They targeted governors who had ordered cruelty, admirals who had laughed at human weakness, and worlds that had cheered. When the freighter crew were condemned, to the galaxy it seemed like humans struck at random. But to those who had written laws against mercy, every attack was personal. On the freighter, the alien healer asked the human pilot, "Do you want this war?" He was silent for a long time, staring at the stars. Finally he said, "Want has nothing to do with it. A debt was created when you pulled me from death. Humanity does not leave debts unpaid. This is not just war, it is the answer." Another outpost fell, another fleet was shattered. By the fourth strike, the Empire no longer laughed. They called emergency councils. They drafted new fleets. But every commander knew the truth. Their war machines were built for dominance, not survival. The humans fought with fury that no empire could match. For them, every battle was not conquest. It was a warning written in fire. Admiral Kane watched as another Imperial command ship was torn apart. His officers stood silently behind him. None celebrated. They all knew this was far from over. The Admiral spoke softly. "We strike not because we can, but because they punished kindness. Until this empire learns fear, there will be no peace." The alien captain of the freighter listened to those words. Her heart heavy, she had only wanted to save one life. Now she watched the galaxy unravel. She did not know if she had doomed them all or given them hope. The Empire thought they could bury the rescue of one human in silence, but instead it became the seed of rebellion. The first strike had shown the galaxy that Terrans did not fade into myths. They had returned with judgment, and with each battle their legend grew. And in the hearts of the terrified Empire, one question spread like fire, whispered in fear by soldiers, rulers, and civilians alike. If this is only their beginning, what will their ending bring? The galaxy no longer slept in peace. Every day new reports arrived. Fleets lost, outposts reduced to wreckage, governors executed in fire. What had begun as whispers was now undeniable truth. Humanity had returned, and they were not fighting for survival. They were delivering judgment. On the freighter that had first saved the wounded human pilot, the crew sat in silence as another broadcast filled their screens. Images of burning warships tumbled through space. The voice of the Terran admiral echoed cold across the waves. "To those who punish mercy, to those who crush kindness, know this. We remember." The alien healer clutched her hands together, whispering, "We only wanted to save one man. How did it become this?" The captain stared at the screen, her voice trembling. "Because kindness is rare, and when it is punished it becomes fire." In the capital of the Empire, the High Council was in chaos. Their proud voices had grown thin with fear. "We must sue for peace," one shouted. "Send envoys, offer them tribute." But another slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Peace is weakness. If we yield now, every world will rebel." They argued, snarling. But the Emperor raised his hand, silencing them. His eyes burned with dread. He had lived long enough to remember the old wars against Earth. He knew what was coming. "They will not bargain," he said. "Not until our crimes are answered," and crimes there were across the Empire. Hundreds of civilians had been punished for showing pity to humans. Some were executed, some exiled, some enslaved. The Terrans remembered each case. They did not strike blindly. Each attack was sharp as a knife, aimed directly at those responsible. Governors who had signed death warrants, generals who had ordered raids, admirals who had mocked mercy, all became targets. A governor on the mining world of Krail sat in his fortress, sneering at the reports. "Let them come," he said to his guards. "Humans are beasts, we will crush them here." But the night sky lit up with fire. Terran warships emerged in silence, and within hours the fortress was rubble. The governor's last scream carried across every channel. Then the Terran voice followed, calm and merciless. This is judgment. Across the Empire, fear grew not among civilians but among rulers. Civilians began to whisper of humans as avengers, not monsters. The poor and the weak, who had long suffered under the Empire's iron law, began to hope. They heard the words, "They saved one human," and believed perhaps kindness could be shielded by Terran fire. Meanwhile, the freighter crew found themselves as unwilling symbols. The Terran admiral ordered that they remain under protection. Wherever they traveled, Terran escorts shadowed them. The human pilot, now fully recovered, spoke often with Admiral Kane. He argued that not all aliens were guilty. He pleaded that vengeance not consume everything. Kane listened, but his eyes remained like stone. We do not strike the innocent, but we do not forgive the guilty. One evening, as stars drifted past the viewing windows, the alien captain asked the human, "Do you think they will stop?" He shook his head. "Not until balance is restored. To us, mercy is sacred, and your empire made it a crime that cannot be ignored." The crew fell silent, realizing the storm had only just begun. The Empire tried again to resist. They gathered fleets larger than ever before, dozens of cruisers, carriers bristling with fighters. But when they met the Terran fleets, numbers meant nothing. Humans fought differently. Each ship moved like it carried the souls of the fallen. Each strike was precise. Carriers unleashed fighters that seemed to vanish, only to reappear inside enemy lines. Battles lasted hours, but the outcome was always the same. Imperial fleets reduced to drifting graves. News of these defeats spread, faster than Imperial lies could smother them. Civilizations watched from afar. Some rulers locked their gates, fearing they would be next. Others whispered prayers to distant stars, asking humans to spare them. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's power trembled. Back on the freighter, the alien healer sat with the human pilot. She asked softly, "Do your people enjoy this?" He closed his eyes, shaking his head. "No, we take no joy in it. Each ship destroyed. Each life taken is heavy on our hearts, but we cannot allow the galaxy to think kindness is weakness. Mercy must never again be punished." In the capital, the Emperor sat alone in his throne chamber, staring at old records of the last Terran wars. He whispered to himself, "We should have ended them then, now it is too late." His advisors begged him to flee to hidden worlds, but he refused. "If they come, they will find me here." And they would come. Every strike was drawing closer to the heart of the Empire. Every act of judgment brought Terran fleets one step nearer to the capital. One saved human had set the stars ablaze, and no throne could hide from that fire. Across the galaxy, in every tavern, on every mining rig, in every market square, the same words were spoken again and again, fear and awe wrapped around them. They saved one human, and humanity delivered judgment. The phrase became more than a story, it became law, and in the silence of deep space, Terran dreadnoughts prepared for the next strike. Engines glowed like angry suns, cannons hummed with restrained power. Humanity was not finished. The scales of judgment were still unbalanced, and soon the galaxy would feel the weight of every debt. The Empire was bleeding. World after world fell silent. Fleets vanished into wreckage, and the proud rulers who once mocked humanity now hid in their fortified palaces. Still, the Terran fleets did not stop. They pressed forward with the patience of hunters and the fury of storms. And with every strike, the galaxy felt the weight of their judgment grow heavier. On the freighter, the alien crew lived as shadows. Within this firestorm, they had never asked for such fate, yet the humans treated them as honored guests wherever they traveled. Terran escorts surrounded them like a shield. The captain looked out at the endless rows of warships, whispering, "All this because we refused to let one man die." The human pilot, now strong and steady, stood beside her. "That one choice lit the stars on fire," he said quietly, "and the fire will not stop until the galaxy learns." The Empire was desperate. They fortified their border worlds, building planetary shields that stretched across continents. They gathered massive armadas, hundreds of cruisers, thousands of fighters. The Emperor himself stood before his generals and declared, "We will not break. We will crush their fleets with our numbers." His words echoed in the grand chamber, but in the eyes of his council, fear lingered. They remembered every report, every defeat. They knew numbers had not saved them before. The first great clash came above the world of Zyros. Its skies burned. With 2 suns, and around it spun the Empire's strongest fortress. 50 cruisers, 10 carriers, and countless escorts guarded it. The Empire believed this would be their stand. Civilians were forced to cheer from the cities below as banners of defiance were raised. But when the Terran fleets arrived, silence fell across the stars. From the void emerged not dozens but hundreds of human ships, dreadnoughts larger than mountains, carriers releasing endless wings of fighters, destroyers moving like blades through the dark. The Imperial commander's confidence cracked. It cannot be. They were never this strong, he whispered. But it was already too late. The battle began with silence. Then a single Terran dreadnought fired. A beam of light carved through the void and shattered the first Imperial cruiser in half. Explosions rippled, and then the storm erupted. Fighters screamed across the black, weaving through enemy lines like hunting falcons. Human destroyers cut through cruisers with merciless precision, and the sky lit with fire brighter than the twin suns themselves. Empire fought with desperation. Their ships surged forward, swarming the Terran lines. But humanity did not break. Their formations shifted like living beasts, every move designed, every strike deliberate. Carriers replaced fallen wings with fresh squadrons instantly. Dreadnoughts unleashed waves of bombardment that tore through the fortress shields like glass. In hours, the Empire's greatest stronghold was nothing but wreckage. From the surface of Zyros, civilians watched the sky burn. Many had grown up believing humans were monsters, yet now they saw a different truth. The Terrans did not fire on their cities. They did not strike at the innocent. Every shot was aimed at soldiers, at war machines, at those who had enforced cruelty, and slowly whispers spread among the crowds. Perhaps the humans are not monsters at all. Perhaps they are justice. Meanwhile, aboard the freighter, the alien healer turned to the human pilot. Your people are winning. But at what cost? He looked down, his jaw tight. The cost was decided when mercy was punished. If kindness had been spared, none of this would be, the captain said softly. And now the whole Empire will pay for the choice of a few. He met her gaze with eyes that carried fire. That is what empires never understand. The cruelty of the few becomes the judgment of the many. Back in the capital, the Emperor heard the news of Zyros's fall. His throne room was filled with silence. Advisors trembled. One dared to whisper, "Perhaps we must kneel. Perhaps we must beg." The Emperor's face twisted. Begging will not save us. They do not want tribute. They want justice, and justice cannot be bribed. His words were bitter, because he knew they were true. Across the galaxy, neutral worlds began to shift. Some refused to aid the Empire, fearing Terran wrath. Others secretly sent messages to the humans, hoping for protection. A tide was turning. Humanity's war was reshaping the balance of the stars. On the Terran flagship, Admiral Kane stood at the viewing window, watching wreckage drift. His officers waited for orders. His voice was steady. Transmit the message again. A signal echoed across the galaxy. To all who hear this, humanity does not forget. If you punish mercy, if you strike kindness, your judgment will come. The freighter crew heard the broadcast, their hearts heavy. They had wanted only to save a life, yet now they were living symbols of this great war. The captain whispered, "We saved one man and the galaxy is burning for it." The human pilot answered, "Then perhaps the galaxy needed to burn." The fall of worlds had begun. Planet by planet, fortress by fortress, the Empire collapsed, and still, the Terran fleets pressed on. They were not here for conquest, not here for wealth or power. They were here for balance, for memory, for judgment. And the galaxy began to understand. Mercy was no weakness, not when guarded by humanity's fire. The Empire was breaking, what once stretched across the stars. Like an endless shadow now cracked under the weight of fire and silence. Fleets that once numbered in the thousands were gone. Fortress worlds turned into drifting ruins. Even their governors and admirals, once untouchable, were hunted and erased with precision, and now only one place remained. The heart of it all, the imperial capital. The freighter that had begun this storm drifted quietly within the protection of the Terran armada. The alien captain stood at her viewing window, her hands pressed against the glass. Before her stretched humanity's greatest fleet, dreadnoughts in the hundreds, carriers like floating cities, destroyers prowling between them like wolves, engines burned brighter than suns, forming a wall of fire across the void. The human pilot, now healed and wearing the black uniform of his people once more, stood beside her. "This is it," he whispered. "The last throne." In the imperial palace, the emperor sat alone. His council had deserted him, some fleeing to hidden colonies, others dead by Terran fire. He had ruled for centuries, his voice once law, his gaze once enough to bend planets. Now he sat in silence, staring at maps of broken fleets and reports of burning worlds. He knew what was coming. He had known from the moment the freighter's act of mercy reached his ears. Still, pride held him to his throne. He whispered to the empty chamber, "If I am to fall, I will fall here." The Terran fleets arrived in silence. They did not broadcast demands. They did not issue ultimatums. They simply surrounded the capital world. Their presence alone was enough to shake the empire to its bones. Civilians filled the streets. Looking up at the skies lit with engines, many had been told for years that humans were beasts. Yet when they saw the Terran ships, they felt not hatred, but awe, for the humans did not fire on their cities. They waited, silent, patient. Admiral Kane stood at the center of his flagship, eyes locked on the planet below. His officers waited for his command, but his voice came quiet, heavy with iron. No words, no bargains. Judgment is not spoken, it is carried out. At his signal, the Terran dreadnoughts shifted, weapons hummed, the air thick with energy. The first beam of fire streaked across the void, striking the Imperial orbital defenses. They shattered instantly, falling like meteors into the atmosphere. Panic swept through the capital. Imperial soldiers scrambled, their fleets rising to defend their emperor. But humanity's wrath was unstoppable. Imperial warships surged upward, thousands of them. There, cannons fired into the black, beams lancing toward the Terran armada. For a moment the skies lit with defiance. Then the Terran fleet answered. Beams of pure light cut through the void. Human fighters tore into the Empire's lines. Dreadnought cannons cracked ships open like glass shells. The defenders fought with desperation, but one by one they fell. From the palace, the Emperor watched as his fleets burned, his hands clenched on the arms of his throne. "So this is judgment," he muttered. "So this is how the Empire ends." His guards begged him to flee. "We can still take you to the deep colonies, you can rebuild." But he shook his head, his voice low. "No, the Terrans will never let me run. They will hunt me to the ends of the stars. Better to die on my throne than beg in the shadows." The freighter crew watched the battle unfold. Their ship shook as shockwaves from explosions rippled even through space. The healer covered her face, whispering, "So many dead." The captain's voice was hollow. This was always the only ending. The human pilot stood tall, his eyes locked on the burning world below. This is not war. This is a reckoning. The final moment came swiftly. The last Imperial fleet was broken, their command ship shattered, and the Terran dreadnoughts turned their gaze on the palace itself. From orbit, beams of fire rained down, cutting through towers, crumbling walls. The Emperor rose from his throne. As the building shook around him, he straightened his robe, lifted his chin, and waited. The roof split apart as fire tore through the palace. Light consumed him, and the throne of the Empire fell to ash. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. The Terran fleet hovered above the smoking capital. They had not taken the city. They had not enslaved its people. They had only destroyed its throne. A message clearer than any words: humanity did not come to rule. They came to judge across the galaxy. The news spread in waves. The last throne had fallen. The empire that once punished mercy was gone. And every world, every ruler, every soldier, who had ever mocked or feared humanity now understood, Humanity remembered everything. On the freighter, the alien captain turned to the human pilot, her voice soft. "It is over." He shook his head, his eyes still burning. "No, this was only the throne. Judgment is not finished. There are still debts left to balance." And in the void beyond the ruined world, the Terran armada shifted, again ready to carry their fire into the stars. The war was not over. The galaxy had only seen the beginning of humanity's final law. The galaxy held its breath. The last throne was ash. The empire that once ruled with cruelty and iron had crumbled in fire. Its fleets were wreckage, its leaders scattered or dead. Yet humanity did not raise banners of conquest. They did not demand tribute. Instead, their warships hovered silently over the broken capital, weapons still glowing, engines humming like the growl of a beast not yet satisfied. On the freighter, that had unknowingly lit the spark, the alien captain and her crew stared in disbelief. They had seen the impossible, an empire that had lasted for ages, shattered in months. The captain whispered, "It is finished." The human pilot beside her shook his head, his eyes dark. "No, judgment does not end with one throne. It ends when the galaxy learns its lesson." And that lesson came swiftly. Across the void, Terran warships broadcast a single message, not long speeches, not politics. Just one line spoken in every tongue, carved into every channel. "Mercy is never weakness. If you punish kindness, humanity will come for you." The words echoed across stations, markets, and homes. Civilians trembled, but many wept with relief. For those who had long lived in fear of their rulers, the message was hope. On distant worlds, stories of humans spread like fire, not of monsters, not of destroyers, but of avengers. Farmers whispered that the Terrans spared civilians. Miners told tales of how only the guilty were struck. And in every corner, people repeated the phrase that had started it all. They saved one human. What began as a whisper was now a law of the stars. The Emperor's death sent shockwaves across every system once bound to his empire. Governors who survived trembled. Some tried to flee, some tried to swear loyalty to the Terrans, but humanity had no interest in ruling them. When approached, the Terran commanders gave the same cold answer. "We do not rule. We do not conquer. We only remember." And those rulers who had ordered cruelty soon found Terran fleets orbiting above their worlds. One by one, judgment fell. The freighter crew could not escape the feeling that all of this had begun with them. The healer wept, quietly. "We only wanted to save a man. Why must the stars burn for it?" The captain answered softly, "Because the stars must never forget it." She turned to the human. "Will it ever stop?" He met her gaze, his voice heavy. "When no ruler dares punish kindness again, then maybe it will." Admiral Kane stood at the center of his flagship, surrounded by the silence of his officers. They had carried out the greatest campaign in human history, but their faces were grim, not joyous. The admiral finally spoke, his voice like iron. "Transmit the decree." And once again across the stars the Terran message rang clear. "To harm those who show mercy to a human is to invite fire. This is our law. This is our judgment." Other civilizations listened. Some cowered, vowing never to touch a human. Again, others debated in secret, wondering if the Terrans would leave them alone. But among the poor, the weak, the forgotten, a new kind of hope was born.